Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Bonsoir tout le monde. I have the pleasure of being here with Lana Payne, President of Unifor, who will speak to you in a moment. Lana and I were just having a meeting, a pre-scheduled meeting, to discuss the situation in our economy, how we can work together across a range of industries, forestry, aerospace, automobiles, and beyond. During the course of that meeting, President Trump announced 25% tariffs against our auto industry. And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of, Unifor workers I stood in front of this morning at the Ambassador Bridge, a bridge that is a symbol and a reality up until now of the tight ties between our two countries, ties of kinship, ties of commerce, ties that are in the process of being broken. We will defend our workers. We will defend our companies. We will defend our country, and we will defend it together. You know, this will hurt us, but through this period, by being together, we will emerge stronger. I think what's happened, and this was part of our discussion, over the course of the last several months, Canadian workers, Canadians as a whole across this country, have gotten over the shock of the betrayal and are learning lessons. We have to look out for ourselves, and we have to look out for each other and work together for each other. And I just want to say a few words before taking some questions about what my government has done to turn that sentiment into reality. We made a commitment a few weeks ago to use every dollar that we collect from retaliatory tariffs to support workers, to directly go to support workers. And last week we made a series of changes to the EI system in order to take the first big step to make good on that promise. There'll be more. We've announced, of course, retaliatory tariffs. We have other options for those retaliatory tariffs. I have asked for a meeting, I will convene rather, a meeting of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet tomorrow to discuss our trade options. But we're also providing the option of major liquidity for our companies. We put in place an ability for companies to delay tax payments. We've put in place a large facility for our largest companies, some of them which may be affected by this, would be affected by this, to draw on liquidity in various forms so that they can take longer-term decisions without undue pressure from short-term unjustified actions. It's also why we focused, in part in anticipation of what might happen, on today's announcement that I made in front of that Ambassador Bridge, for the $2 billion Strategic Response Fund. And the point of that fund, the point of government procurement, the point of linking up through supply chains, the point of working with labor, led by Unifor, is to build a made-in-Canada supply chain, a made-in-Canada option, so that we are less affected by these. Now, that will take time, but we are already putting in place the building blocks for that. To be clear, we are standing together, standing for Canadian workers across levels of government, and I would add that Premier Ford and I have discussed this already at length, and we will have more discussions in terms of our overall approach. But together, we are stronger.
Do you have any clarity on how Canada will be impacted and how parts will be treated? And how will you respond? Will you retaliate?
Yeah, this is a crucial question. I'll give a short answer. We do not yet have the executive order. And so there are different variants of the 25% announcement that was made today. One would be that it is only on the, this is still significant to be absolutely clear, but on the part component of a car. Another would be that it's on the entire vehicle. We await the executive order for that clarity. But to be absolutely clear, even in the more, quote, restricted version of this, It is a significant action. It's entirely unjustified. It's entirely inconsistent with CUSMA and indeed the long history of relations in the auto sector right back through the auto pact. I think it would be appropriate that the President and I speak, given the action that he's taken. I'm sure that it will happen soon. I'm not going to give you a precise timing on that. In terms of options, which was the second part of Ms. Martin's question, even during a caretaker period of government, we have anticipated this possibility. We have put in place the mechanisms so that if it is appropriate for retaliatory tariffs, and there's many considerations to be taken in those regards, and I want to have the meeting of our cabinet, Canada-U.S. cabinet, other considerations. We need to see the details of the executive order, but we will take the steps that are in the interests of Canadian workers of Canada. We are going to stand up for Canada. We're going to be united, and we will fight in a unified way. And I would say, if I may, and I will, Lana and Ms. Payne can speak for herself, obviously, the discussions that we've had, the discussions I've had with Premier Ford, we're entirely aligned in terms of the seriousness with which we're taking this and the seriousness of our response. Thank you very much.
Hi, Brian Platt with Bloomberg News. We're 8 days out from Donald Trump's next stated tariff deadline of April 2nd. We know you have not spoken with the president yet since you took office. What is your government's engagement strategy ahead of April 2nd with the White House? And will any ministers or officials be traveling to Washington before April 2nd?
Well, I think two things, Brian. One is that the ministers, the Minister of International Trade, Mr. Leblanc, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Madame Joly, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of National Security, others, are in contact with their counterparts. Okay. First point. Second is we have learned, and others have learned over time, that there is an unpredictability to U.S. trade policy. There is certainly an opacity to U.S. trade policy. So how does one respond to that? What you do is you prepare for the worst, and part of that is what we have done in the last weeks. We have made substantial changes to our unemployment insurance program to support Canadian workers. We, unlike the Conservative Party, which is going to use the tariff revenues for tax cuts, use everything for tax cuts, by the way, we are going to use retaliatory tariff revenues to protect Canadian workers and to reinvest there. We have put in place major financial support mechanisms for Canadian companies. We've allowed them, we are going to allow them to defer tax payments, also for liquidity purposes. We've put in support mechanisms. Cody is behind me. For the Minister of Agriculture is behind me, support mechanisms in the agriculture sector as well. So we've taken a number of precautionary measures so that we can react quickly there. We also have in place a schedule of goods for which we can add retaliatory tariffs to on April 2nd, depending on what the Americans do. So we have done that work and have the ability to put those tariffs in place. And with respect to the president, the point is to have substantive discussions. The point is not theater. The point is to get serious. Sovereign nation to sovereign nation. That's what we're looking for in terms of putting this trading relationship back on a new path that works best for Canada, given the unreliability of America.
In terms of if new tariffs are put on Canada on April 2nd, in terms of a response, you've pointed to the counter tariff list that was already prepared. Are there any non-tariff measures that are on the table next week for Canada? And I'm thinking particularly export controls or export taxes.
I would focus on those measures are options for for Canada. I'll speak in general for Canada. But the tariff response in the near term is several-fold. One is everything I just mentioned, I won't repeat, on protection for workers and firms and others. Secondly, retaliatory tariffs in a way that has maximum impact on America and a minimum impact here on Canada. So we'll be very deliberate on that. Thirdly, it's Canadian procurement, a greater focus on Canadian procurement. And you will have heard in my announcement today this focus on Canadian steel and aluminum. And of course, Irving can be a big part of that as we build out. Fourthly, all the measures to build our economy strong. And, you know, that's why the federal-provincial meeting last Friday was so important, because that commitment to move to free trade in Canada, with the federal government, my government, committing that we will remove federal barriers by Canada Day, legislate to remove those barriers. This is huge. I mean, look, the people behind me have great skilled trades, and actually they have a whole career ahead of them given the shipbuilding contracts. But some of them, for family reasons or other reasons, might want to move to Alberta for a job. You know, they're mechanical engineers or they're electrical engineers or they're skilled welders, tradespeople. They might want to move to Alberta, BC, the Northwest Territories for some opportunity. We're going to make sure that they can do it like that. Okay, that's a different thing. So all of that doesn't sound like a trade response, but it is a trade response. And I'll put it again, this is doing it because it's right for Canada. We're in charge of our destiny. But the other thing it does is it shows the Americans that we're strong. And we're going to get stronger while they get weaker, because they are inflicting harm on themselves with these tariffs. And that is going to put us in a better place for negotiations when they come. And that is a crucial point. We're not rushing to the table to take something. Serious discussions, sovereign nation to sovereign nation, comprehensive, Canada strong against America as equals. And that's when we will get the best deal for Canada.